I've worked security at some of the biggest shows in the world, but nothing prepared me for what I saw the night Taylor Swift's dressing room door opened onto a place that couldn't possibly exist. I thought I was protecting a pop star. Instead, I was standing guard over something I shouldn't have seen. And now, I can't stop seeing it. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Taylor Swift that night. My post was normally 2 arenas over in the kind of gigs where your main job is waving through delivery trucks and telling overeager superfans that no, you can't get them backstage. But one of our regular guards called in sick, and my supervisor called me with a simple pitch. It's overtime. Easy money. Just keep eyes on the hallway outside her dressing room. MetLife was already shaking when I arrived. Literally, even before the house lights went down. The bass from the sound check thrummed through the walls like a second heartbeat. The corridors smelled like a strange mix of perfume, sweat, and something sterile, almost medicinal, that I couldn't place. There was no casual chaos back there like I'd seen with other tours. No frenzied assistants chasing down last-minute costumes. No sound guys jogging with coils of cable. Everything was measured, slow, almost choreographed. When I reached the backstage wing, the air felt thicker, warmer than the rest of the stadium, like the HVAC skipped this hallway entirely. The sound was different too, muffled, as if the space had its own set of walls inside the walls, and somewhere behind them, a low, steady hum. Not quite music, not quite machinery. It felt intentional. The dressing room itself didn't fit in with the utilitarian doors lining the hall. All the others were gray metal, marked with temporary signs and duct-taped numbers. Hers was a dark, polished wood with no handle, no visible lock, and no paper label. Just an etched silver symbol, so faint you could miss it if the light didn't catch it right. A perfect triangle, a circle centered inside, and thin lines radiating outward like a sun drawn by a mathematician. I'd worked enough high-profile gigs to know that certain things weren't meant to be commented on, but that symbol stuck in my head like a splinter. I made a point of not looking at it too long. People came and went through that door, but the traffic didn't make sense. A stylist might go in with arms full of gowns and emerge an hour later empty-handed, eyes glassy, walking like someone who'd just been woken up from a deep dream. 2 dancers entered together, laughing about something, but when they returned, they didn't say a word. One of them avoided my eyes completely. The other kept rubbing his wrist like he'd been wearing something tight. Marcus, a longtime stagehand I'd crossed paths with on other jobs, passed me once carrying a garment bag and muttered out of the side of his mouth, "Don't stare too long." His eyes flicked toward the door like he regretted even saying it. I asked what he meant, but he just shook his head, quick and sharp, and kept walking. Every time the door opened, I tried to catch a glimpse inside. Most of the time it was quick, just a flash of the usual trappings. Racks of costumes, a vanity mirror glowing with bulbs, a bouquet of flowers in the corner. But once, just for a heartbeat, the angle caught differently. And instead of the bright clutter of a dressing room, I saw a narrow strip of shadow. Not dark from lack of light. Dark like distance, like the space kept going far beyond where a wall should have been. Even from backstage, you can feel a stadium crowd as a living thing. When Taylor took the stage, the roar that went up wasn't just loud, it was unified. Every cheer hit at the same pitch, the same rhythm, as if the entire audience had rehearsed together for weeks. I watched the feed from the backstage monitors. The giant screens above the stage cycled through visuals that looked expensive and intricate, but the longer I stared, the more they seemed patterned. Golden rings rotated inside triangles. Glowing arches appeared and vanished. Faint lines slid across the images like the sweep of a clock's second hand. The colors moved too slowly for concert visuals, hypnotic in their pacing. It wasn't just the visuals. The crowd's movements synced with them. A rotating symbol appeared on the screen, and tens of thousands of people raised their phones at the exact same moment. A golden light flooded the stage, and they all swayed left at once. It didn't feel like the crowd was responding to the music. It felt like they were following a cue no one had given aloud. While the show went on, my job didn't change. Keep the hallway clear, watch the door. But the hum I'd noticed earlier had deepened, low enough that I could feel it in my sternum. The longer I stood there, the more it seemed to fold into the music from the stage, until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. During a quieter number, the backstage monitor flickered, just static for a split second. But in that blink, the camera cut to Taylor standing beneath the glowing arch on stage, framed in white light. Her eyes locked directly onto the lens. It wasn't the sweeping, all-inclusive gaze performers give to make a crowd feel seen. It was precise, fixed, like she could see through the monitor, through the walls, right into the hallway where I was standing. I blinked, and the image snapped back to normal, the song carrying on as if nothing had happened. But the door behind me clicked softly. I turned just enough to see it opening, slowly on its own, and that same impossible strip of darkness waited beyond it, pulling at the edges of my vision like it wanted me to step closer. Around midnight, the atmosphere in the stadium shifted, and I don't mean in a poetic way. It was physical, like the pressure in the air changed. The crowd's roaring energy softened all at once, as if the oxygen had been drained. From where I stood backstage, the sound didn't fade naturally. It was siphoned, pulled toward somewhere else. The humming in the corridor deepened until it felt like it was vibrating in my ribs. One of the overhead bulbs flickered, and the rest followed, dimming in sequence like a curtain sweeping across the hallway. My earpiece crackled with nothing but static. That's when my phone vibrated. I keep it on silent during work, but somehow it was already in my hand, unlocked, open to an app I had never downloaded. The screen was completely black except for a glowing countdown in the center. 2:22. No labels, no icons, just those numbers ticking down. I tried to exit, swipe, power down. Nothing worked. Every time I touched the screen, it jumped back to the timer. The seconds ran down slower than they should have, like each one stretched, forcing me to feel the weight of it. When it hit 0, the dressing room door, always closed unless someone went in or out, swung open on its own. No sound, no creak, just that slow, deliberate movement, revealing the dark beyond. I stepped forward before I could talk myself out of it. The frame of the doorway felt colder than the air in the corridor, and as soon as I crossed it, the stadium noise faded to nothing. Not muffled, gone. The space beyond wasn't a room. It was a hallway that stretched far beyond what the stadium's layout could possibly allow. The walls weren't painted drywall, they were stone, smooth and pale, lit by a soft, golden glow from nowhere I could see. My footsteps made no sound on the floor, which seemed to be cut from the same stone. The hum was louder here, layered with faint threads of something else. Not music exactly, but close, like voices humming in harmony, too quiet to fully make out. I tried to listen for words, but they slipped away every time I thought I recognized a sound. At the far end of the hallway stood another archway, much taller than any normal doorway. It pulsed faintly with light, almost as if it were breathing. Standing beneath it was Taylor, but she wasn't wearing the stage outfit she'd had on when the show started. Now she wore something that shimmered like liquid metal, and in her hands, she held an object unlike any microphone I'd ever seen. It was metallic, intricate, with etchings that looked older than any instrument could be. Patterns that seemed to shift if I looked at them too long. She lifted the microphone to her lips and began to sing. The sound that came out didn't belong to any single voice. It was layered, her tone threading through dozens of others, male and female, deep and high, some cracking like static, some resonating so low I felt it more than heard it. It was the same voice, and yet not the same at all, something wearing her voice like a mask. The song was slow, each note suspended until the air itself seemed to bend around it. And with every rise and fall, the light in the archway pulsed brighter. That's when I noticed the movement inside the arch, shapes shifting in the glow. They were tall, impossibly thin, and they didn't walk so much as flow forward, the edges of their forms blurring like smoke in a breeze. I couldn't make out faces, only the sense that they were looking directly at her, or maybe through her. The harmonics in the air pressed against my thoughts, making it harder to remember why I'd stepped inside in the first place. Flashes began popping into my mind. Faces I didn't recognize, rooms I'd never been in, memories that couldn't belong to me. Something inside me snapped. Instinct, maybe. I took a step back, then another, trying to anchor myself to the cold frame of the door. As I moved, the images in my head faded, but the hum grew sharper, like it was aware of my retreat. I risked a glance toward the stadium monitors mounted on the far wall of the backstage corridor. They showed Taylor still on stage, under the normal lights, singing to the crowd like nothing was happening. It was the same moment, the same song, but here, in this stone hallway, she was somewhere else entirely, singing to something that wasn't human. That's when I heard it. A voice, not from the arch, not from her, but inside my head. Calm, final. Don't interfere. The dressing room door began to swing shut on its own, slow but inevitable. I stumbled backward into the real corridor just as it closed completely, cutting off the golden glow and the hum in an instant. The hallway lights snapped back to normal. My phone was back on its home screen. The countdown app was gone, as if it had never been there at all. When the concert ended, I stayed at my post while the crowd poured out. Taylor came down the corridor surrounded by security, her hair damp from the stage, her smile wide and bright. She walked past like any other artist at the end of a show, except for that one moment where her eyes met mine. It wasn't a glance of recognition, more like the brief, cold stillness of a diver touching bottom before pushing back to the surface. In that instant, I felt the weight of the archway, the hum, the shapes in the light, as if they'd followed her here. When she was gone, the hallway felt emptier than it should have. I clocked out and didn't say a word to anyone. But that night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the stone hallway, the gold light, the microphone that didn't belong on a stage. The next day, I searched online for anything. Fan videos, blurry concert footage, rumors about weird backstage happenings. I wasn't the only one. Hidden in the noise of setlist debates and outfit praise, there were threads, posts from fans saying they'd experienced moments where the entire stadium seemed to pause, or where they'd blacked out during a song and come 2 minutes later in a different part of the arena. One clip from a past tour stop caught my attention. During a ballad, the big screen showed an ornate arch, exactly like the one I'd seen, glowing faintly for exactly 2 minutes and 22 seconds. The person filming had no idea what it meant, but in the background, you could see audience members swaying in perfect unison, eyes half closed. It wasn't just this tour, either. Digging further back, I found whispers about similar symbols appearing in her visuals as far back as her early stadium shows. The triangle and circle motif showed up repeatedly, usually dismissed as just part of the aesthetic. But the timing was always precise. And the more I read, the more I realized no one was connecting the dots. A week later, I got called back to work another date, this time in Chicago. I told myself I'd stick to my job, no wandering curiosity. But just before the second half of the show, her head of security unlocked the dressing room door and went inside, leaving it cracked open. From my angle, I could see the hallway again. Same stone walls, same gold light. This time, someone else stood beneath the arch. A woman I recognized from old celebrity headlines. Someone who hadn't been seen in years. Her expression was vacant, her hands at her sides. Taylor stood beside her, speaking in a calm, deliberate rhythm, repeating the same sentence. The woman's responses got shorter each time until she just stood there, breathing shallowly. The shapes moved again in the archway's glow, and my chest tightened as I realized they weren't just behind her. They were stepping closer. I should have turned away, but instead I leaned in just enough to feel it, the hum sliding under my skin, threading itself into my heartbeat. My vision tunneled. The backstage hallway faded, replaced entirely by the stone corridor. Taylor's words reached me now, each one dropping into the air like a stone into still water. "Do you remember?" she asked. Not to me, but it felt like the question hung there for both of us. The woman didn't answer. The shadows drew closer. I could see the faint outlines of hands, impossibly long fingers curling around the edges of the arch. The gold light flickered just for a moment, and in that flicker, Taylor's eyes went black, two voids reflecting nothing back. The door slammed shut so hard I felt it in my teeth. I stumbled backward into the real corridor, gasping like I'd just surfaced from deep water. The hum was gone. The stadium noise rushed back in, jarringly loud. From down the hall, I saw Marcus watching me. His expression was flat, unreadable, but he gave a single shake of his head as if to say, "You don't want to know." He turned and walked away. I didn't follow. I didn't even finish my shift properly. I just waited until the crowd was gone and left without clocking out. Days later, my phone buzzed at exactly 3:33 a.m. A text from an unknown number. "You were immune. Do not interfere." No name, no context. I deleted it immediately, but I can still see it when I close my eyes. Since then, I've stopped working concerts. I've stopped listening to her music, but that doesn't help. In quiet moments, I still hear the hum, low, layered, waiting. And sometimes, in the corner of my vision, I swear, I see the door. And if you've ever been to one of her shows, if you've ever felt a moment where the world seemed to pause, where the cheering in your ears suddenly sounded far away, Remember this: some doors lead to places you're not meant to see. And once you do, they never close completely.